Hello, friend SB here. The new season is approaching, so let's wrap up this one with a quick review of All For One Youthage. This is a series of videos where I nerd out about game design and help inform the lovely viewers on things related to healthy game design and some insight into game development. In these videos, I give my reviews using a very specific approach, where we first look at what the character is designed to do and how well they do that thing, we critique the character's design or implementation flaws, and then we discuss how improvements can be made. This approach is important because the vast majority of people will make the mistake of skipping ahead to making changes without any understanding of what the character is supposed to do or articulating what needs addressing. Now, there are some things about this character in which there's a lot of misinformation out there. There are people that are just uninformed, there are people that are just telling lies, so I think it would be good to clear the air. So let's get into it. So this character is not Prime All For One. I want to make that very clear. This character is not Prime All For One. This is Young All For One. And to help make that a bit more clearer to understand, it's like comparing a Pikachu to a Pichu. Or, for the Dragon Ball Z fans out there, it's like comparing Super Boo to Kid Boo. Because this character is Kid Boo. This character is a Pichu. One of those sounds a lot more flattering than the other. Kid Boo, I think, is a better comparison. Because while Super Boo might be a stronger character, Kid Boo is a lot more indiscriminately destructive. And we will explore why that is the case. I'll tell you now, he is absolutely deserving of 300 health, not 350. Because this character is a bit of a glass cannon. He has a lot of very clear vulnerabilities while being very focused on damage. And he's also very good at keeping away from danger given his ability to fly and maneuver in the air while shooting down opponents. And one of the most surprising things about this character release is that he's pretty well balanced. I do think he's on the strong side, and I think any new character should be on the strong side so that players get an idea on how to fight against them by putting them in a position where they see enough meta play. But we're also going to draw some comparisons to other characters that have a similar niche. Previously, we talked about Assault Endeavor. One of the things I did not like about this character is that whenever he fired, he did very similar damage to Assault Deku. So that's 57 damage there. This is going to be a bit more. 56, actually it was a bit less, wow. Yeah, that's right, base damage is slightly less, and then level 9 is the same. So that's 76 damage there, and then 76 damage there as well. Right, I don't have any tuning on. But whenever Endeavor hits someone below, you're doing additional damage compared to what Deku can do. Whereas with this character, Young Afo, instead you're doing less damage when hitting directly, but the detonation will do even more damage. This is how Endeavor should have been. But with this character, they got it right from the beginning. In a lot of cases, you won't be able to get that explosion off, because one, it's delayed and people are constantly moving around, and two, they need to be near a surface. Hitting someone directly, like during air combat, means you will always be doing less damage. That said, if your range is perfectly on the edge, you will be able to do the explosion damage without it technically being connected to any sort of floor, because the projectile will freeze in midair once it reaches the end of its range. But the delay is still there, so chances are people are still going to be able to avoid it. Beta is another one of those moves that has additional functions. Beta is another one of those moves that have multiple functions. When I tap the button, there is one version of the move, and when I hold the button, there is another version of the move. And they both have different ammo costs. You have 2 ammo at all levels. Tap will always cost 1 ammo, and hold will always cost 2 ammo. And it should be pretty easy to see why they've designed it this way. Because this is a very destructive ability, especially once you hit high levels where you can do a lot of damage from afar without needing to commit. And with the hold version, while it is very easy to dodge if you see it coming, this is meant to be an area control move. You're not supposed to hit it most of the time. It's simply to say, this is my area, get out of my area, which is very good in situations where you're in a small room, or you're trying to defend a down teammate, or maybe yourself. This way you can throw down the beta, and then you can start to heal yourself, and then you're going to be relatively safe for the duration, or part of the duration of your drinking. So full team heal is going to be 8 seconds, you can use a small shield which will be 3 seconds long. Even faster if you've got the tuning for high speed replenishment, so you can consume shields faster. It's pretty good. Another instance in which this character does a much better job than Endeavor is through the damage areas, is through the warning area. So with Endeavor, whenever he tried to use like his Gamma, there's absolutely no indication that something is coming. Let me go even higher. Did you see that coming? No, you wouldn't. But as soon as I change character to Aetho, there are very clear signs when something is approaching. I critiqued Endeavor for this, and I am now going to praise All For One for this. Damage indicators are very important, because it always gives the other player a chance to avoid the attack. Moving on to the Gamma. Now the way that this move works is that you can fly around, you're going relatively slow, and then by pressing the button you can fire out these energy balls, and then once the ammo is depleted you go into this big explosion mode, which does a good amount of damage. Whenever you hit someone with the small energy balls, they take some hit stun. You can't constantly shoot at them, they have that invincibility, but the main purpose of that is to simply stall them for when you can do the big explosion damage, which has a much higher burst potential amount. This is a very good aggression tool for making sure that someone isn't able to escape. It is not particularly good for DPS, as Alpha is, or combos with Beta especially. It's very much a move that is designed to help pin someone down, especially when they're very vulnerable, and once you've depleted their shields, they're not just slightly pushed back, but they're completely thrown to the ground, which is a lot more effective for stalling. The main problem is the invincibility, but we will talk about that in a bit. I think this is a very unique and interesting move. There's some room for improvement in its execution, but I think getting the final explosion at the end of the move does feel very satisfying. Now, one of the interesting things about this move is the way that it scales with levels. So when I do the final explosion on this move, look how much damage I'm dealing. 150 damage, and then they get sent to the ground. When I level up this move, how much damage do I do? 210. So I'm doing more damage, but each tick is not actually dealing more damage. It's actually changing the amount of damage or the amount of hits that they can withstand before getting sent to the ground. In other words, the down power is the thing that's scaling. Not the flat damage, the down power. It will always do 10 damage no matter what level. And this is unique, this is interesting. And this is a perfectly reasonable use of down power. One thing you might know about when he uses his Gamma is that he has reduced down power as well as reduced damage taken. So ordinarily I'm doing 67 damage there, he goes into Gamma, I hit him again, 47 damage. There is a 30% damage reduction, which is the same as if someone were to activate Sisterly Disposition. And during the final explosion it is reduced even further, now it's 34. And I believe that is a 50% reduction. Now that is Prime Sisterly. But it's only during the final explosion, so I'll give it a pass. But he also has reduced down power, which I think is fair considering because he is so vulnerable while in this state, it would be pretty abusable if he was constantly getting knocked out of it. He does have armor, but the reduced down power also means that certain moves which have a lot of very high innate down power won't be immediately knocking him out of it, as they normally can. That said, just because he has damage reduction does not mean that he's becoming a tank. In fact, he's still very vulnerable. And people will absolutely be able to take advantage of him while he's in this state. And also you can just grab him out of it and that will also cancel the move. Believe me, he is not made into a tank when he's in Gamma. He, if anything, just turns into a damage sponge that cannot evade anything. He is so damn vulnerable. I absolutely understand why they've given him damage reduction. Talking now about his special action, his flight. Now this is very different from other moves compared to Hawks and Endeavor, especially the startup. For one thing, you get a good amount of vertical height when initiating the dash, but it's also got some startup vulnerability. One of the things that I've criticized Hawks for, literally last video, was his burst speed, because he can just go into flight immediately. Whereas on this character, there is that startup speed. There is a moment of vulnerability, and therefore there is a way for someone to take advantage of it. This is a reasonable use of burst mobility because there's startup to it. In other words, there's counterplay, and counterplay is super important. A lot of this character's counterplay is to do with his vulnerability. And when he's flying, I complimented this before, but the ammo consumption is at a pretty good rate. He's able to stay in the sky for a good amount of time. And even the startup costs 40 ammo to use, which is a pretty good chunk, meaning that you cannot constantly spam it. You will run out very easily. That said, there are still things that you can do to try and preserve your momentum using special action. You can immediately transition into Gamma, you can cancel the Gamma immediately using a dodge input. There's some other movement tech that people have discovered, such as Alpha Special Stab. The implementation is a little bit questionable, we'll get to that later, but I think it's absolutely fine. He's transferring that movement speed into Gamma. Transitioning from air into freefall is pretty fast. Part of that is probably going to be to blame for the momentum update at the start of the season. Still don't feel great about that, but it is what it is. Next, let's talk about the special stab, as I call it. So this move, very similar to Bakugo's alpha ability, will pierce through walls. And that can lead to some interesting situations where, if someone's position is a bit obvious, you can continuously do damage to them without even making yourself vulnerable. I've certainly enjoyed my time doing this. You can also take advantage of the camera by positioning the crosshair so it's not looking at the wall and then shooting. You will also be able to get a clean hit without actually making yourself vulnerable. That's just some camera trickery. The debuff it applies is pretty unique because, similar to Aizawa, where he's able to disable your quirk abilities, this one specifically disables your special action. And that also applies to anything that can be considered a special action, including flying through the sky. It also applies to Ida's wall run, because that is technically a special action. So if we look at Ida, we can see that under special action, which is at the top here, it does include both the carry and also the wall run. Don't mind the Japanese, I can read it fine. And finally, the special stab is also very satisfying to hit. I want to bring extra attention to the sound design of this move. That very sharp sound there. Another thing you may or may not notice as well is there is a bit of stoppage. So if I jump into the air, fall back down, and also stab someone while we're in the air, look at how my character freezes. There's a bit of freeze there, and that is just to aid the impact to make it feel more satisfying. So I would like to commend them on that. Very nice. I also find that the air melee is pretty unique, because instead of being a combo starter tool like most characters, this is, if anything, a keep off of me tool. You can push someone away from you, you can use it for a little bit of additional momentum, so let's say I'm not quite clearing this, I'm going to shoot that off, and now I've landed on top of this roof here. It has its uses, it's unique, I like it. And of course, getting to good height, it works well with his wind condition, which is to stay at a high up spot so you can shoot at people's feet, so you can hit people with the direct shot and then the explosion. It all works into his wind condition, which is, of course, do damage without taking any damage, and being as aggressive as you can to absolutely maximize that. Speaking of vulnerabilities, the way that he is weak is that he wants to be the aggressor here. He doesn't much like it when people fight back. So like many other Assault characters, he's very much a bully, and his Assault passive does make him a bit better at putting himself in those potentially risky situations where people do want to fight back, but it doesn't mean that he is any better at soaking up damage. As for the grounded melee, it is pretty satisfying. You can chain the first hit together a few times, you can go for the double hit to knock someone pretty far back, you can do some things like this, you can catch them in beta, you can hold someone in place while the falling beta comes down and hits them. There's a lot you can do with his melee attacks. Now with an air melee like this, you're not exactly going to be hitting people very easily, but it is quite good as a tool that you can use while in flight mode. For example, if I fly near someone, I can quickly go into a melee there. I can also do it while in the Gamma form, so I can quickly cancel and tap there. Because if someone is pressuring you while you're in Gamma, you don't want to stay in Gamma. You're not enough of a damage sponge in order to take it. You do very much want to cancel as soon as you're being threatened and then get out of there. So that is a perfectly reasonable use for that. As I say, You want to deal a bunch of damage, but you don't want to take a lot of damage, so prioritizing your safety is pretty good, so then you can come back and shoot people a lot more. Unlike previous videos, I actually have quite a lot of good things to say about this guy, and I would quite like to keep to this trend in the future if possible. But it's not all good, let's get into some critiques. Critique number 1. Some of his combos are pretty strong. If I just go for beta into alpha, it does a good amount of damage, and all I'm doing is just pressing 2 buttons. The hitbox of the hold beta is pretty awkward as well, because while it is a giant death ball that falls from the sky, you'd think it would be a bit better at hitting someone with that big explosion. But mechanically the way it works is simply just about the center point. If the center point of the projectile is blocked, like it doesn't have line of sight to someone, it will not connect. Whereas another hitbox is on the entire death ball itself, which is why it's doing a little bit of damage, but it's not hitting the explosion. It requires that line of sight to the center. Like literally, this would hit, but this doesn't. See here? Doesn't hit. Right there, now it should have line of sight. Does hit. I understand why they do it this way. It isn't very fair to hit someone by firing your attack into an area that they're not even in. Let's say, for example, you're in an area with multiple floors. Here I am in the ground floor here. I do not have line of sight to the other person. I'm going to just drop this here, and despite him not even being in the same room as me, the attack is hitting. This way, I am getting some value out of it. It isn't particularly abusable. So it does make that interaction a little bit awkward, and there are probably ways to get about that, but that is something that could be addressed. So the tap beta is pretty inconsistent. When I do the tap beta, it will fire a bunch in a string like this, and depending on where they are when they get hit by it, they will get knocked back in a certain direction, and they could be knocked back from one into another, like so. So I did 114 damage there. There's also another hitbox where the actual ball itself is landing, which is in addition to the explosion. I just want to put that out there. That is actually a good thing, but it is slightly less damage overall than getting knocked from one into another. And when everyone's moving about, you're not really going to be doing that on purpose, because they could go into any direction. So whether you get that extra damage or not is kind of up to randomness. And when you start to level up the move, because the area is a lot larger, it is more likely to not have this effect, because they have to be in a more particular location. There's less balls in this particular area, because they're now far more spread out to go over a distance. Leading into the next thing, look how quickly I am able to deal damage from a distance. I'm all the way back here, I press beta. It took a bit of time to get there, that's pretty reactable. Go to level 9, and also consider my range in all this. Just look how much damage I'm doing without even needing to commit to the fight. I am all the way back here, and I can just like sit here, fire off alphas, press beta a few times, do some cheeky damage. It's very non-committal. And I think an aggressive playstyle should feel more committal. Yes, he's a glass cannon, yes he doesn't want to be putting himself in harm's way, but that's the exciting part. You have to inevitably to do the damage. In order to maximize damage output, you don't have to maximize damage input, you just need to maximize risk. It's the relationship between risk and reward. In order to get more reward out of an interaction, it is healthy to have a good amount of risk as well. And when you're able to stay really far back and press a few buttons with really long range, you're able to do a ridiculous amount of damage without having much risk at all. I won't say that this is grossly abusable, but I would like this to be a bit less viable of a strategy. Now earlier, when I talked about hitting someone with Gamma about how to stall someone, I also want to point out how long does it take for someone to recover after getting hit by one shot. Invincibility, and he's vulnerable again. Now also put that into perspective, the fire rate of this attack. You can fire decently fast, but if you're waiting for someone to be vulnerable first, you have to wait so much time. And this is even worse if you're attacking someone without shield, because they get thrown on their face, they get up, invincibility, and then you shoot them again. While I'm waiting for someone to get back up, I've shot them a total of 3 times, and now I've run out of ammo. 3 times! The hit stun here is a problem because there's so much waiting, there's so much downtime. It's not very fun for the person attacking because they're just waiting for someone to get up. It's not great for the person being attacked because it feels really slow. It feels very uninteractive. So this might be a general system thing, but I would like it if there was a faster way of recovering from an attack like this. Because as it is, this is just too slow. I would prefer it if I can take advantage of this attack speed rather than having to wait, making that attack speed feel less effective, less relevant. It's okay if there's multiple people I'm trying to attack, I guess, but I digress. So remember when we talked about how there's reduced down power and reduced damage when someone is in their gamma form? There is a bit of a downside that might not be necessarily easy to identify. If I go into a character such as Standard AFO and I hit someone with my beta, pay attention to how much damage I deal here. 150 and then they get knocked over. That's the hard knockdown limit. So by going into Gamma, now he has reduced down power. Now look how much damage I'm doing. 216. I'm doing more damage, substantially so, than what I was doing before in a mode in which he should be taking less damage. Now let's see what happens when I do it when he's in the explosion form. I got to 174 and then my beta ran out. What about if it's All Might? This man is dead. What if I also did this? You are dead, not a big surprise. Well, that was fun. So yeah, when the down power reduction and the damage reduction are different, it ends up being worse for you than you'd think. And yes, he has armor during this, so ironically, I guess he becomes even more vulnerable to All Might. Also consider at any point, he can just like, grab you out of it. Like, let's say I'm Ida. I'm able to do a lot more damage than I would normally be able to. Oh, there it is. The problem is not that I'm able to hit him a lot more. The problem is that I'm able to do a lot more damage as a result of being able to hit a lot more. If he took half the amount of down power as well as half the amount of damage, then the total damage I would do would be somewhere relatively similar to the total amount of damage I would do without those reductions. I would just be spending more ammo to do so. So this just makes the character weaker. Up next, let's talk a bit more about the special stab. So one of the features of this move is the ammo cost. If I fire and I miss, it costs 15. If I fire and I hit, it costs a total of 45%, meaning that whenever I hit, it's taking 30 more ammo away from me. So effectively, you're being forgiven for missing. Look how much I can miss this attack and just be able to continuously spam it. Well, ain't that something? There is just no penalty for missing. So they want you to limit the amount that you're able to hit someone with it, but they don't want to penalize you for missing. I am not a big fan of that sort of design. If you missed, you should be penalized for it. This is just arbitrarily lowering the skill floor. Or is it raising the skill floor? This is still a bit of a weird thing. There's kind of two meanings to that. Now, I've complained about this thing before, but similar to Bakugo, hitting someone with a wall-piercing move is not very easy. Why? Because I know exactly where this Bakugo is, and if I press special action, am I going to hit him? Hell no! Like, where is that even going? It's going up there. And this is all because of raycasting. Because the idea is that the move isn't trying to hit in that general direction. It is specifically looking at what object is directly under my crosshair. It is then drawing a line to that point from my character model, and that's the direction that the shot will go in. So there's a significant difference between this and that. And if you're close to that surface, then it goes in an even stranger direction. And part of the reason of this is basically just because of the third-person camera. With better camera alignment, this is less of an issue. The only way to make it an absolute, completely 100% non-issue is to have a first-person camera, which is a different game. And for some reason, aim mode is even worse at this, because look at how the character moves to the left side. Let's talk about flying now. So this is a problem that is specifically to do with the hold dash input. This won't happen with toggle dash. If I am moving, like so, and I were to go off a cliff or do something that makes my character airborne for even a split second, literally 1 frame, do you know what happens? It tries to initiate an air dash, which costs all of that ammo, and sometimes it's something that is not necessarily easy to notice. Like, anytime a character tries to go over a small surface like this, they'll do an auto jump. Meaning, if I am just running along, and I just clip the edge of this ever so slightly, character just goes into a flight. Up, I'm in the air. If I turn dash to toggle, and then do the exact same thing, well, I'm not pressing the button, and it doesn't really do anything. I just go airborne slightly, and I don't initiate a dash. I really like playing with hold dash on, so I'd rather not be forced to use my air dash every time this happens. And with toggle dash on, the only way that you can go into an air dash is by pressing the dash button while you're in the air. Like, even when I'm holding down the button and then go off the edge, it doesn't try to initiate it. I have to press it down while I'm in the air, and only then does it execute the air dash. What I would propose, if you have a hold dash on, very similar to this, it will not do anything unless you press the button down while it was not previously pressed down while in the air. If you're holding it and then become airborne, it won't try to initiate it. That's all I'm asking. This will, of course, be a similar issue with characters like Hawks and Endeavor. Next, let's talk about an exploit. If I get a bunch of tech cards, activate them, and start flying, look at my ammo right now. It's going up, not down. And as long as it is still going up, and I keep spending ammo using special action, it will not ever run out until my tech cards run out. If it were to get to 100%, then it goes, oh wait, no, we're meant to be draining. My bad. But I can just like reinitiate it and, yeah, problem solved. And this is, I think, probably to do with reload span, which is the amount of time it takes for reloading to begin. The reload span is reduced from having any sort of reload speed increase, and it's unable to check if I'm in my flying state before starting the reload. Because ordinarily, if you're flying, it's not supposed to reload. This is just an exploit. Interestingly, doesn't work at 30 FPS. Sorry, Switch players. But hey, apparently you get to play the more functional game now. Finally, let's do some melee critiques. Whenever you use the first melee attack, look at that dash. I criticized this before. I don't like this simply because I wasn't moving before pressing the button, and I'm gaining all of this distance as a result. In fact, this is possibly faster than his normal run speed, and this feels like a dash attack rather than initiating a melee string. It does sort of work well with the character playstyle, but this is not a melee one, this is a dash attack. Generally, the way that dash attacks work is that you gain more distance based on your speed prior to pressing the button, but it is the exact same no matter what speed you're already at. You could be not moving at all, same distance. You could be dashing, same distance. Doesn't matter in this game. Also, fun thing about that, if you use the melee to go off an edge, if you have good timing, you can do another melee before it's able to check that you're airborne. As a result, you can start stringing multiple melee attacks together in the air. It is kind of difficult to do. Once you get the timing down, it's quite interesting. Let's see if I can do it. I'm not good at this. Oh, we got one. It might be more difficult based on frame rate. I'm gonna go for 3. I got 4! Let's go! Yeah, that's weird. Finally, air melee has some awkward physics. So whenever you're in the air and then you do the air melee, you will fall normally, your full speed, but for whatever reason, it seems like your full speed has been stored somewhere. And then if you try to do another air melee, it won't reset your full speed, it will just use whatever it was at before. So again, if I'm doing this and then I press it again, I'll suddenly drop a lot faster. Yeah, so full speed isn't resetting. Very weird. And that is all I'm going to talk about for my critiques. Now we talk about the potential improvements. And honestly, I don't think there's much that I need to talk about. I think this character is in the most place in a pretty good spot. But anyway, I will use some mods to describe some changes that I might make. Once again, I've loaded into the game, I've got some mods on, and the first most obvious thing that we can talk about is the camera. It is just a standard camera that I've done to make it more aligned with the crosshair, especially when aimed in, which is particularly important when you have a move that pierces through walls. Ordinarily, when you are very close to the wall, it will not hit someone on the other side. And in this case, it still won't because it's still a third-person camera. But I can go a little bit further away from the wall and it will become a lot more reliable. And it's not just necessarily about the camera, this is the ideal camera position because it's aligned with the character's eyes. And ideally, when you're aiming your weapon, you should be trying to align your gun or whatever with your line of sight. Right now, he's got his hand behind his head, but it's vaguely aligned with his head. But as soon as he fires, it's now below his head. And a lot of characters are similar in that they are not even bothering to align it with their eyes. So I have some beef with the animations as well. It's not just the camera. Actually, make this make sense. Why is it that characters in this game are compelled to always fire from the hip in like every situation? Goddamn. But I digress. This character is quite a bit taller than most others. As a matter of fact, he's quite a bit shorter than himself. Again, this is baby Afo. This is Kid Buu Afo. I've made some other changes. One of the changes I've made is to do with beta. So before I complained that it would be quite fast, you could shoot someone and it would do a lot of damage, and especially if you're far away from the target. Well, now I've made it a bit slower, so if you're far away, you can more easily see it coming. I've also made it increasingly slower at later levels, just to compensate the increased range it has. So if you're at level 9, it is going to go pretty far, and it is going to take quite a bit of time to get to the final one. But I think in terms of speed over distance, it is generally getting faster with each upgrade. But also, do you remember when we talked about how characters will be pushed around by the beta? In order to make it more consistent, I think the solution, there's two possible solutions. One I prefer. One is that the person will always be pushed in a particular direction, so they cannot possibly be pushed from one into another. And the other solution is to make it so that you will not be hit by a second no matter what. In other words, just reduce the hit count to 1. These are technically different projectiles, I don't know if that matters. But if you get hit by one, you'll never get hit by another. That's the idea. And I think that latter solution is my preferred solution to this problem. This way, you still have the reward from hitting someone in the center of the shot rather than from the side of it. And you won't have that inconsistent situation in which you'll just randomly get a double hit. And also, knockback is generally unchanged. Next, let's talk about the Gamma. The down power and damage reduction properties I have changed to be, instead of 30% damage reduction and I think 50% knockback reduction, or down power reduction, 50% down power reduction, I have now changed it so they're both 20% reduction. Yeah, so as it turns out, even though I changed the values in the file, it's not actually having any effect in game. That happens sometimes, usually because values are being overwritten from the server. I can give you the expected numbers though. Base Afo Beta is 26 damage per hit with a down power of 84. He will get 6 hits in before knockdown occurs for a total of 156 damage. With a 20% reduction in both damage and down power, he would be doing 21 damage and hitting 8 times for a total of 168 damage. He would only be doing 12 damage more than normal. By comparison, the old values would allow him to deal 17 damage and hit 12 times for a total of 204 damage. By using similar multipliers, you would become less inadvertently vulnerable. And so, final changes. Normalize the stab cost. It is currently 15% per shot now. I haven't actually changed it, I don't know if I can, don't care to check. explanation is far too short. When I hit, it is 45%. Just make it normalized so it is always doing about, I don't know, make it always 45% regardless if you hit or miss. How about that? That seem fair? Just make it the same. 45 per shot is fine. You can combo with it pretty nice. I like this tool. I just don't like how spammy it is and there's basically no consequence for it. Also add some goddamn spam to this move so it's not immediately reloading. And finally, this is just general improvements, not even specific to this character, but make it so that certain moves do not have ridiculously high down power. This is really dumb. That way we can have moves like this that don't require obscenely high down power reduction in order to function. And also the knockback recovery. Make it so that there's less wait time. I would recommend something like in Smash, if you get knocked down, you can do a roll get up and you have a little bit of roll invincibility there. At a similar effect. I just really don't like the idea of having to wait for someone to get up and all that long wait time. It's really dumb. And that way I can actually come a bit closer to making the most out of this sort of fire rate. So, final conclusions, Young All For One, how do we feel about him? I really like the character, so I am genuinely not going to rank him very low. There are a few things that I would absolutely want changed about him. So I would not put him too high. Relative to most characters in this game, this is really good. This is really good. I'm actually gonna put him maybe on the design and implementation tier list that I talk about. I would genuinely put him close to A rank. Maybe on the threshold of A and B, I don't know. But he's definitely deserving of being that high in my opinion. This is genuinely a damn good character. So if this was interesting to you, please do the things that you do on the YouTubes, likes, comments, especially comments, because we love having that discussion. If there's anything that you're critical of that I haven't mentioned, anything that you want to praise that I haven't mentioned, then please let me know. If there's anything that you would personally change, please do not tell me in isolation. Please tell me what you don't like and what it should be. Remember the format, we do it for a good reason. And I will see you in another video at some point. Who knows when? Who knows what it will be? There's going to be a new season, like literally next week. I'm recording this on Wednesday. I know nothing. See you then. Bye bye.